So I thought you got the best sense that politics as normal had been suspended today. We weren't expecting, we didn't have any advance notice that the visit from President Zelenskyy was going to take place this morning. We didn't know one was on the cards, and yet it has completely dominated the news agenda. Really, there are going to be only two stories all the way through the day on the news, and one is what's happening in Turkey and Syria, and the other is the visit by President Zelenskyy. Now, at moments of kind of when the world spotlight, certainly the domestic spotlight and the world is looking at the UK Parliament, at the House of Commons, it can feel that people rise to the occasion. Today was a lot of people just getting in on the act. I'm afraid, if I'm being completely brutal. There were lots of people making lots of points. I'm not sure that we learnt anything. I'm not sure that we shed much light on anything. What you did have was a sense that everybody was on the same page. There were no dissenting voices when it comes to Britain standing steadfast with its Ukrainian allies. And although President Zelenskyy wasn't in the viewing gallery, as perhaps he might have been, he's preparing for that 1 o'clock statement in Westminster Hall, which is a few metres away to both Houses of Parliament. You didn't get any sign of dissent, and the opposition Labour Party under Keir Starmer made it quite clear that they would be taking pretty much the same position that Rishi Sunak has done, which is the same position as Liz Truss, same position as Boris Johnson. But then beyond that, it was a session that basically saw a lot of people trying to come up with new angles on the same, on the same thing, and gently trying to underscore their own domestic political position. If you look at Keir Starmer's calculation tonight, I think that he will have decided that he wanted to use all of his 6-question allocation on this, because one of the goals, I think, at the moment for the Labour leadership is to underscore their hope that people start to see Keir Starmer not just as a domestic figure, but as a global statesman. And that was one of the things behind that trip at the end of January to Davos, so you could see Keir Starmer on the world stage, hanging out with fellow global leaders, even though he's an opposition party figure. And I think that by being able to effectively concentrate today just on this one global international affairs, international relations topic, he looks to do that again. They hope that has some beneficial effect. And also, cynically, there isn't going to be anything else on the news all the way through the day, so there's no point in making party political attacks. They seem to fall on deaf ears when the other leaders and the other MPs and PMQs made them. But then he sort of danced around the houses. He wanted to underscore Labour's commitment to NATO, sort of making a domestic political point. He also talked about what victory, or rather defeat, for President Putin would look like, and here I think you get quite quickly into a grey and uncomfortable area. Not that anyone really actually wanted to debate the difficult bits of the Ukraine crisis in the Commons chamber today, because he asked, do we have to keep going until President Putin accepts defeat, given that President Putin keeps on coming back for more? But in asking that question, he sort of highlighted that it's unclear what victory looks like. Does it involve President Putin still being in office? Or if, as Keir Starmer argues, he is still in office, won't he come back for more? But of course, President Putin staying in office in Moscow is not a subject that I think that UK politicians would want to pronounce on and make that a hurdle for victory or a goal, because of the possible incendiary consequences that kind of position would have. Similarly, talking about things like reparations having to fall to Russia for what's happened in Ukraine is sort of dancing around a sort of area that's theoretical but sounds good to the average punter, to the average voter. So I think that there was. And then by the time we got to Vicky Ford, dressed in Ukrainian colours, asking whether or not there should be a minute's silence for Ukraine, I think that rather summed up, I thought, some of the tone of bits of today. So in a situation where the House of Commons is united, I don't think that we learned a great deal other than sending a strong signal of support, in of itself important, ahead of President Zelenskyy's address, but not one where politicians particularly stepped up and took us beyond the kind of the basics of what we already know.